Good morning. This is Scott and Don again for the third installation of Scott's Journey. So, this morning, I believe Scott wanted to talk about his philosophy on life and money and whatever else comes up. So, Scott, let's go.
Okay, so as I was telling you before we started, I have a hard time putting this all together in my head and how to explain it to people. But I've always had a really hard, or let me say, a really bad relationship with money. Uh, I'm terrible at making it. Um, I'm terrible at holding on to it, and it was just really always a big problem for me. And so, you guys know that I dropped out of high school, and I went to work with my father after trying a few things because I really didn't want to just do what my dad did because he did it. So I tried my hand at a few other things, construction, roofing, tile, like, all kinds of stuff like that, things my peers were doing. And none of it felt right for me. So my dad's like, come and work for me. And he had just started his own business. And my dad wasn't much better, didn't have a much better relationship with money than I did. Uh,
Let me add one thing while you're talking. And
mm-hmm.
this, I think we've talked briefly before about the cycle of creation. Um, and the fact that our beliefs determine how we think about things.
Sure.
Thinking determines how we feel. Feeling determines behavior. Behavior. So, but when as soon as you said that, I can assure you that you have some beliefs, or maybe, I don't know if you still have them, but you have some beliefs about money that affected everything. And once you can identify those beliefs and change them, it totally changes your relationship with money. So that's just something I wanted to add because a lot of people have these type of things and different issues, and they don't really know why it is, but it really gets down to root causes, beliefs, and particularly if your father was like that, I can guarantee you there's some generational belief going on about money, and maybe a lot of people have this deal about you can't be real spiritual and have a lot of money. So anyhow, that might be an interesting topic, for another time. But yeah, go ahead.
Actually, you kind of brought up something that I didn't make a note of, but I like to address it right now. Um, yeah. Well, my dad suffered from the same problem I have, which is dyslexia. I think I may have mentioned this before, but back in the 40s and 50s, they didn't know what it was, so they just called him stupid. And and so yeah, I mean, he was a great press operator, but he could never further himself because he couldn't get past the reading problem. I think that had a big thing to do with it. And and as things started, as I guess the economy got bad there in the early 80s, and we had multiple mortgages on our home when I was a kid, and bankers would be calling the house all the time, threatening to kick us out of the house. And I remember more than once, but I remember just one time in particular, my mother didn't want to take the call, and I was 17 years old, and she made me pick it up. She knew it was a creditor. She made me pick it up, and she made me lie. I shouldn't say well, yeah, I mean, she told me to lie, which I never liked. I never liked lying. I always thought it was better just to be honest. And that had a huge effect on me. That was when I swore that I would never buy a house. I would never ever put myself in that situation because, I mean, no matter how good your job is, well, you know better than anybody, I think, after reading your book, that things can happen and you can lose it all, right, Don?
Yeah.
So yeah, I had that skewed view of money, and but anyhow, I went ahead and followed my father into the printing business, and he was a great press operator. He was kind of a little bit famous around where I lived for being the best. He could do things on a small printing press that other people couldn't do. He was known for that, and he taught me to do that. And but I never. Everybody wants to be better than their teacher, right? I never could get better than my father. He was always better than me, right up until I ended my career as a printer, and so let's see here. Oh, okay. Uh, so back around, I guess it was around 1987, 86, 87. I got into a car accident, and it's a long story, and I got held responsible for the accident, even though the guy could have avoided it, but it was my fault. And I was ordered by the court to pay him back $5,000, and I never made more than $250 a week, and so that's how I started off my adulthood, with this huge debt. I had to every week I had to go give this guy half of my paycheck, and my credit was destroyed after that. And it just was a really hard way to start off life. And after 5 years of paying this debt back, I finally paid it off, and I'm thinking, okay, now I can start making money. Now I can. And my brother, at this time, he was always good at making money. I called him Golden Boy. And without a college degree, he was pretty amazing. Without a college degree, he got a job at Harris Corporation, and he started making good money there. And I remember thinking, okay, I want to compete with my brother. I want to show that I can do that too. And I had a lot of confidence in myself. So I really, put my nose to the grindstone and started working away, and I could never find a job where I could stay more than a few years. 5 years was the absolute maximum I ever stayed at any one job, not because I would get fired or anything. People loved me. I was a dependable worker. I could do these things on the press like my father could do. Not quite as good as him. But I wasn't getting any satisfaction in life that way. And then I realized I had forgotten something that I learned when I was 17 years old. I'd figured it out back then, how to live life in a way that would make you happy. It was right after the very first time I ever took a hallucinogenic drug called mescaline. And then that gave me that made me realize that the world we live in was illusionary. It was, and I'm not sure if I had been reading. I think I had been reading Aldous Huxley at the time, who wrote the Doors of Perception. And I'll never forget. I think it was like the next day after I had this hallucinogenic experience. I was listening to a song by a band named Styx. The name of the song was Grand Illusion. I know I've mentioned this before. And I was walking from my friend's house, who lived 3 doors down, to home, and I was walking across the front yards instead of going to the sidewalk. But I remember stopping mid-stride, and I was listening to like a Walkman and the Grand Illusion, and it just struck me all at once that none of this stuff is going to make you happy. I also want to talk about, like, my parents used to run around in these circles of rich people, because my sister was a ballet dancer, and we had these rich friends, and we'd go to their houses, and I hated the way, I hope my mom doesn't see this or anybody in my family, but I hated the way they sucked up to these people. Like they thought they were better than us, and they wanted to be like that. And somehow they thought by being around them they would get something. I don't know. I just always hated that, and I kind of had a hatred towards rich people from that, and I apologize for that, but I just a disdain for people with money, and not because I was jealous of them. It's just because I knew that they weren't any better than us. In fact, our family was better than theirs in many ways. So I just hated that. And so now here I am in my late or mid to late 20s, and I realized that for whatever reason, like you said, I had some kind of mental block or something, or for some reason I couldn't make a lot of money. And I said, and I really got into reading philosophy books at the time, and there were a couple of books that really set me on my path. One of them was by a philosopher named Erich Fromm, Fromm. You ever heard of him, Don?
Yeah, I think I've read some of his books many years ago. Was he a psychologist or
I think he was.
Yeah, I don't remember. I don't recognize the name of that book, but yeah, his name is familiar.
He also wrote The Five Loves. That was a great book.
Yeah, I may have read that one.
But it was a long time ago for me too. But especially this book, To Have or To Be. And there's a pop singer. Gosh, I wanted to do some research before I came on. Anyways, there's a song. There's a line in the song. It's better to want what you have than have what you want. And this is a question that I've often asked people, especially my students when I was an English teacher. And there was one lesson in one particular English book that I used. That's a story, and you may have heard this story. It's a philosophical thought story, and it's this wealthy businessman goes to a remote tropical island, and while he's there, he meets a fisherman who's coming back from fishing, and it's only about 2:00 in the afternoon, and the guy's got like 4 beautiful fish, and the man buys one from him, and then he says, "Oh, what are you going to do now for the rest of the day?" He says, yeah, "I'm going to go home and play with my children and meet with my friends and enjoy the evening, enjoy the day, and play some music." And he's like, "Well, if you were to work the entire day and catch more fish, then you would have enough money to buy another boat. And then if you have 2 boats, then you'd have enough money to buy your own canning factory. And then you could be rich like me." And this man says, "Well, then what I would do?" He said, "Well, then you would have time to hang out with your friends and spend time with your children." Yeah. So you see where I'm going with this.
Actually, that's interesting you mentioned that, because I saw a cartoon years ago that summed up that whole story. And I was actually looking for it not too long ago. And it was like a picture of this native, with just a loincloth sitting on the beach with this wealthy guy, and they were having the conversation.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it's a famous story. And it was great that it was in my English book, because this was an opportunity to teach some philosophy to my students. And so I would ask them, which is better, to have whatever you want or to really want what you have? Yeah. And without fail, they all gave the wrong answer, in my opinion, is to get whatever you want. And so many of my students, they all want to be millionaires. Every one of my students in the higher level, the adults or the young adults, what do you want to be? I want to be like Bill Gates or Steve Jobs. I want to be a millionaire. Everybody can't be millionaires. But then I would ask them.
Yeah, but unfortunately, that is how we're programmed. And, through the media, through everything, we're programmed like that. And I know you read my book recently, and you understand. I was programmed like that. I was almost 50 years old before I broke that programming. I mean, I never, to me, money was never something, to revere or chase after. But, my programming was like a lot of people, is to be successful. You have the right education, you have good health, you have money, financial and all that stuff. And you go, like you say, you go chasing after all these outside things, thinking it's going to make you happy, when happiness is an inside job. So yeah, that's a, and it's not just money, it's any outside thing. It could be the right relationship. It could be the right health. It could be, anything. Money is sort of like a metaphor for anything outside is going to make me happy.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And it's like a measuring stick or something, right?
Well, but
how we compare ourselves to other people. And
well, but here's the deal. Here's the flip side of that, and you may have this belief. I've had lots of clients that had these beliefs that, if you have too much money, it's not going to be good for you spiritually, because they have this belief that if you're rich, you're a shallow person. You can't be all that stuff. So it's not about money. It's not about, it's about the attachment to anything. Anything anything we have an attachment to in the material world, which is all impermanent, is, it's not gonna do anything. So yeah, that's yeah.
Yeah. I agree with you. You're right. And coincidentally, at the same time when I was discovering minimalism, and that's what it was. Eric Fromm's book was, I can't remember exactly, but I know it was the idea that the less you have, the happier you are. Oh, I by the way, I want to back up for a second. And you're absolutely right about, I was one of those people who thought that money was the root of all evil. Actually, that's a misquote.
It's
a lot
the
of people
love
misquote.
money, the attachment,
the lust for money, the love of money is the root of evil.
The attachment.
A lot of people get that wrong.
Right.
But still, I told you how I had this disdain for rich people because of the way my parents sucked up to them, and I just really didn't like it.
Yeah.
And I didn't like most of the rich people I met either. Most of them were not the kind of people that I wanted to hang around with.
So, along the way, my guess is that you developed a belief that it's not good to have too much money, because you'll be a superficial asshole.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And
listen,
it is true. It is true. I think if a person gets a lot of money or a lot of material things before they've done their inner work, that does happen. But the deal is, and this is, what I've learned, and my belief is, it's not about how much money you have or don't have. I mean, you could be a billionaire and be extremely happy and spiritual and a good person, or you could be a bum on the streets and be a miserable person, not a good person. So it's not about the money; it's about the inside job and what your belief and your thinking is. but yeah, it's very easy when you're around people that have a lot and they haven't done their inner work, and they're not the kind of people you want to be around. You automatically think, well, if I had a lot of money, I would be like that. And I don't want to be like that, so I can't have a lot of money.
Okay, well, that brings up another point that I didn't write in my notes that I needed to talk about. Around the early 90s, my aunt, who is, because she's like 90 years old now, she's still around, very sharp woman, extremely intelligent, extremely good businesswoman. But she decided to go after some inheritance that my family had. First, I need to tell you a little bit about this inheritance, because you're not going to believe this. I hand to God, this is a true story. So in the 16th century, I had an ancestor on my mother's side. His name was Acevedo. His last name was Acevedo. I'm not sure what his first name was, but he was a Spanish privateer. And that's like a fancy word for being a pirate. And he made a deal with the English because he knew the shipping lanes, the Spanish shipping lanes and stuff. And he started raiding Spanish ships, stealing their gold, and then storing it back in England. And he became extremely wealthy. Some of the stories go that some of the crown jewels in England, if they're still there anymore, I got a feeling that they've been cleaned out, belong to part of my inheritance was in there, along with property all over the world, several bank accounts. So she started doing an investigation, and she found several bank accounts and property holdings. And right around 1991, 92, she got all the paperwork for, I think there were 200 people in the family who were in the inheritance. And somewhere at home back in Florida, probably gone by now, I had this stack of legal documents, and at the very top of it, it said Acevedo inheritance $900 million. That's how much the total inheritance was. And doing some rough math, my take would have been like $2 million. And I can tell you, Don, had I got that $2 million back then, I would not have become a philosopher. I would not have become a student of shamanism, and I wouldn't be the man I am today. And I probably would have become a rich asshole. And and I believe that God kept us from getting that money just so that I wouldn't. Is that an ego? Is that egotistical, or is that somehow like?
I think that's true. I mean, I think you may remember in my book, I was in a similar situation. I mean, for a good part of my life, I thought having a lot of money was the thing. And, I don't know if you remember reading about that hospital deal I got in where I thought.
That's around the same time when I was.
Exactly. I mean, I thought, I thought I was going to be a multimillionaire, and I can guarantee you that if I had got that money before I had done my inner work, I would not be where I am today. I don't know where I would be, but I don't believe I would have found the path that I'm on now. So,
or at least much later. I mean,
who knows if at all, but that's what I call a eucatastrophic event is what something that looks like a catastrophe at the time. But if you have the right attitude, it turns out to be a great blessing.
What was the term you used for that?
What's that? Eucatastrophic. That's a term that J.R.R. Tolkien came up with. Good catastrophe. EU.
That's right.
Is a Greek for good. So eucatastrophic is a good catastrophe, and we all have those. I mean,
Right.
so when you have something like that, you either have a breakdown or a breakthrough. And
Right.
quite often you'll have the breakdown before the breakthrough. But, every time if you talk to somebody that's gone through that and they've had a breakthrough, and then you ask them if you could go back and change that and not have it, would you?
Right.
And people are
No.
going to say, no, I wouldn't change it because, here's the deal. If we're happy with who we are today, then we've got to be grateful for everything that got us here, because every piece of the
Right.
puzzle, the things that seem good, bad, and whatever, everything that happened is what got you where you are right now. So that's the way life works. And it's not about what happens to us. It's about the attitude that we take towards what happens to us that makes all the difference.
Yeah. Those 6.5 days I spent in prison in Bangkok were absolute hell. But I wouldn't want to take that back. I learned a lot from that, and I honestly believe that was something that binded Nina and I together. Going through that shared experience, I think maybe we wouldn't even have stayed together had that not happened.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of on the Appalachian Trail. You had these great times, but you also had really, really, really hard times. And I used to have these little disposable cameras on the trail, and Anna was suffering terribly one day with. It had been raining for a week straight. Everything we had was wet. Her feet were raw hamburger, and she was climbing a fence style, because every once in a while there are these pastures and you have to go over these fences. And she got to the top and she turned around and she's going down the back, and she's crying, and she's just miserable and just so unhappy. I took my camera out and I took a picture of her. And she says, "Why are you taking a picture of me now? Because we have to, accept everything, the hard and the good." Anyways, I just had to throw that one in there too.
Yeah. So let's get back to
Yeah.
your philosophy. The things that happened that created your philosophy, not only about money but about life, because
Right.
money is a big part of people's lives. And you have to have, in most societies, you have to have a certain amount of money just to function. So
Yeah. Well, I just decided that I wasn't going to play by the rules anymore. Um, I was going to make up my own rules, and and like I said, I was a long distance hiker at the time. We used to go into wilderness areas. This friend of mine, Rich Purley, and I, and we used to like getting off the trail, going bushwhacking, doing survival skills, building our own shelters, and the minimalist philosophy fit perfectly with that. And like one of the first times I did like a 50-mile hike, which is a pretty long hike. My pack weighed 50 pounds, 55 pounds, because I brought all this cool stuff that was going to make me comfortable, right? And then you figure out, wow, the least you have, and you learn to be happy with that, the better it is for your hike. And so these things fit together very well. And there was one other book that I read, and I'm sure you've never heard of this one. Well, I'd be shocked if you had, because it was like found it in a used bookstore, and the guy wasn't famous, but the name of the book was Against Ourselves. And simply put, the philosophy that he puts forth in this book is, the more you try to do things to make life better, the more deleterious of effect it has on your life. And then he gives lots of examples in history. I'll give you one. Antibiotics. All right. So when I think it was around the Civil War that penicillin was discovered, or maybe shortly after, and they saved all these lives with penicillin. And then doctors just started giving this and other antibiotics. And I know people in Thailand, people take antibiotics for no reason at all. They just take antibiotics. And when you do that, what you end up doing is creating bacteria that is resistant to the drug, and they become super bacteria. So that's just one example. And he gives many, many others about how by trying to make your life better, you actually make it worse. So these two books and this philosophy, I started to really take onto myself, and yeah, I did start getting happier. You know, it was pretty amazing. And so let me see, where do I go against ourselves? But really, we're 30 minutes in, and this is about how long I thought I would talk about this. So that's about all I had for today.
Well, let me ask you this. Where are you today? What is your belief and thoughts about money and how it relates to your spiritual growth? I mean, do you feel like if somebody gave you, $2 million today, how would it change your life? What would you do differently?
Well, first, let me say that, and I don't want people to say that I'm looking for pity here. So somebody made a comment when I first started doing this channel about tarot readings and becoming a tarot card reader. I was destitute. At that time, before Deborah, she was my first paying customer, and she gave me $100 to do a reading. Before I got that $100, between us both, Nina and I, we had $1, and we had to spend that on drinking water. And I'm not trying to get sympathy from people. And here's the thing is, yeah, it was hard, but I still managed to find happiness in every single day. If it was just, seeing the beautiful sky here in Thailand, or flowers, or whatever. And also since 2015, when I lost my job at the high school, the one I'd had for 11 and a half, almost 12 years, I went through some really, really hard times. I was all alone. I was eating like 1 or 2 meals a day. I was happy if I got 2 meals a day. What I'm trying to say is, I did a lot of suffering with no money, but I never complained about it. I didn't go on Facebook and cry and say, "Oh, poor me." I didn't ask people for money like that. I just dealt with it, and I knew that I could find happiness within, and I did it. And it wasn't easy, but I did. And I'm here to tell you, I'm sick of being poor. Okay, I had enough of it. I don't want to be like that anymore. And I'm ready to embrace money. And Janine actually helped me out a lot with this, realizing that the desire for nice things isn't a sin. It doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make you less spiritual. It doesn't make you unenlightened. There's nothing wrong with having nice things. And I finally, for the first time, I understand that now. I appreciate greatly the people who are paying me for a service that I'm providing. And sometimes I feel like, wow, $50, that's a lot of money. To me, that's a lot of money, Don, $50. And at first, I felt bad asking people for $50 for 2 hours to talk to me and read tarot cards, but I'm getting over that. And by the way, I'm going to be raising my rates at some point. I just want to give enough people an opportunity to see my work and experience my work before I start doing that. I want, clientele and word of mouth and all that. So, and to answer your question, yeah, if I got a large sum of money right now, no, I know exactly how I would handle it, and I wouldn't become an obnoxious asshole like I would have when I was 21 and I got the money. And I would do really good things with it, as well as having a nice boat and a nice car and a nice house,
Yeah, well, I
So
mean,
I think,
money is something, that everybody deals with, and it affects relationships, and it affects individuals in lots of ways. I remember reading a book years ago. I forget the guy's name, called Money and the Meaning of Life. Very interesting book.
yeah,
Jacob
and
Jacob Needleman. That's Jacob Needleman.
thank you for that.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it's like no money, no honey. That's the other thing. I always hated that. That's like one thing in English that all Thai women can say: no money, no honey.
Lord.
And I have to say that my ex, I told her right from the beginning that, hey, listen, I'm not here to get rich, and if you're looking for a guy with a lot of money, I'm not the guy. That was like a litmus test I used on women to find out if they, would really be with me because of me, or they're just looking for money. And to her credit, she stuck with me for a long time. And but actually, that really was an issue. I know that when I went to visit her family in the Philippines, they're like, "What are you doing with this foreigner, this American who doesn't have any money?" And the same thing with Nina too. But when I met Nina, I was really, really poor at that time, and that's why I say she's a 1 in probably 10 million woman, because I don't think there's another woman in Thailand who would have helped a guy get out of prison who had no money, and stuck with me. Then when I got exiled, as I like to call it, I got kicked out of the country for a year for overstaying my visa. She paid my rent. She took care of my bills. She took care of my pets, and she didn't really have a lot of money either. And she stuck with me through all of that for 1 year. And so she really is an amazing woman to do that. I guess she actually loves me. So, but I'm telling you, I'm here to make a statement that I'm ready to make money, Don. I'm ready to make money. And I have no illusions of my YouTube channel getting super big, 100 million followers. Some of my friends think that, they think that I don't see it happening, but that's not important. If I were to, right now, I'm averaging about 5 clients a week, and at $50 per client, I'm maintaining the lifestyle that I had as a full-time teacher, which is okay with me. It's comfortable. That's not including some very generous donations. Thank you very much, Matthew and Cynthia. You know who you are. But if I could get 10 clients a week, which is only 2 a day, 5 days a week, it's not a lot, right? I could have a really nice life, a decent house near the sea, maybe a car. Haven't had a car in almost 20 years. Just a nice, comfortable life. And that's my goal. That's what I'm shooting for. And hopefully in the next 2 to 3 years to have I'll be working, say, 20 hours a week, I think. No, 25, 30 hours a week, and living near the sea, and just not having to worry about, my visa, paying my visa, and I have medical issues. I need to take care of. My teeth are all bad. My eye, I can't even see out of this eye because a cataract is completely occluded it. And just normal stuff that most people take care of. So that's about it. I'm wondering. I mean, we didn't get as many people watching tonight as I had hoped. But I'm wondering if anybody out there has any questions. Thank you, Patricia. Or Don, maybe if you had any questions.
No, I'm good.
If not, then I think we can wrap it up. But yeah, I mean, I just wish everybody can understand this, that, and I wish I had gotten it in from your book. The way you put it in your book was so well said about,
So I've got my book. I've got my book right here. Should I put it up?
Do you have that passage from your book?
I don't have the passage. I couldn't find
definitely,
it.
Yeah. You can put, yeah, definitely. You can plug it for sure.
Yeah, I mean, this is I don't have it. Yeah, I mean, I wrote this book a couple of years ago. Basically, I've been having clients over the years telling me I should, write a book, but I, never got around to it. But the purpose of writing it really was to share information with people that they might not find out in the mainstream. Because I've, like yourself, Scott, I've been a truth seeker all my life. And as part of my journey, I really got on this spiritual journey about over 30 years ago. And I've spent a lot of money and a lot of time, as a client and with clients. And I read a lot. So my intention in the book was to give a person in one place some really awesome techniques that they're not going to find out about in the mainstream. And, when I started to write the book, I realized that I needed to lay some groundwork for why should somebody even listen to me?
Right.
So, so it certainly wasn't intended to be an autobiography, but, as you know, I ended up sharing some things about my life, some experiences and things I learned, and then talked about it. So, I mean, that's the title. Really, I think a lot of people, when they're going to write a book, they have a real problem figuring out the title. But for me, once I decided I was going to do it, the title it's just like living from the inside out. I mean, that's
and to me, it was just so clear. I mean,
like I said, it was the title was easy. And what was kind of interesting is when I had a guy, you got to do something with the cover. And I basically had a guy in India, and I just told him a little bit about, my philosophy and what I was trying to do. And he literally sent me this graphic for the cover.
Yeah, show that again.
That graphic for the cover was the first one he sent me.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, man, he nailed it. Cool. He got that cycle of creation, beliefs, thoughts, feelings, but, one man's journey from his head to his heart. That's what it was. I mean, I lived in my head, for the first 45, 50 years of my life. If I couldn't see, feel, touch, understand it, it didn't exist in my world. And as you know, I mean, you got into it a lot earlier, but I can just tell you that all the stuff that I know to be true today, 35 years ago, I would have told you it was totally crap out of my ignorance. I mean, astrology, tarot, energy, all that stuff. But So yeah, it's that book is basically the work that I do, just like the work that you do, is just an extension of how I live my life. I mean, if I wasn't doing this work at all with people, I'd be living life the same. And it's just like, when you've learned some stuff that's really valuable, you want to share it with people, just like what you're doing. You like to share it with people to hopefully help them have a better life if that's what they're interested in. So, yeah.
So you, like me, you probably have people who sense this from you, or they hear you say something, and then they come and they ask you about, like, I stopped to wash dishes in Andover, Maine, to get enough money to complete the trail, and there's a businessman there. I can't remember his name. He owned a restaurant that sold turkey dinners, really good stuff too, and it was kind of funny because I made him call me Plato. I wouldn't answer to Scott. And as is typical, I'm always philosophizing. If I have any opportunity to get any type of, to make people question their life or think about life, I would take it. And one day he called me into his office, and I can't remember the exact conversation, but he was 35 years old, successful businessman, but he wasn't happy with his life. And he was like, just kind of asking me, like, how did you end up doing what you do? And this happened to me a lot, many times, and it occurred to me that you and I may have been having the same revelation at the same time in history, but at different ages too. Do you realize that?
Mine started around 1990.
Right. And that's when I started coming out of this desire to try to be rich, right? Or try to make a lot of money to compete with my brother. And yeah, and I that's about the time I read To Have or to Be and these other books. And I was getting into long distance hiking. So it's funny, we were both having the same philosophical revelation at about the same time. Yeah. I find that very interesting.
Yeah.
So that's about it for me tonight, Don. I'm not sure if I have any more. Somebody said that they'd like to hear more of these talks with us. If we do, I'd like it to be more of a back and forth. I'd like you to tell people some about your story. It's amazing what you went through. So I don't know. We'll play it by ear. Don?
Yeah, no, we could. I think we could, maybe have some conversations that would be useful to people, and probably what would be good if some of your followers would say what they're interested in.
Right.
what kind of issues they're having in life, and what they would like. Our experience and learnings about. I mean, I think that could be fun. 'Cause I found out that as I'm sharing and teaching other people, that I always learn more too. I mean,
Absolutely.
as a teacher, I know when I was in college as a graduate student teaching, freshman and sophomore math, algebra, calculus, different types of math, things that were very easy for me to do. But I know that when I had to teach them, that my depth of understanding about those topics went a lot deeper, because as you know, learning how to do something is one level of understanding, but learning how to effectively teach it is a whole different level. So yeah, I would be very willing, if you have people that are interested in exploring particular topics, we could maybe do a live call like this, where we could have some dialogue and just, answer questions and interactive, and everybody could share, and it would probably be a good learning experience for all of us. So I'm open to that.
And right now on this platform, until it's a little bit pricey for me to get the the not free version. I can have one more person on, so we could actually have one person join us here if
So
somebody wanted to.
Yeah. So how many people can ask questions? I mean,
on the chat well. On the chat, anybody can ask questions in the chat.
Oh, okay. Well, that's what I'm saying. So I think on the chat, you and I could have the conversation, and if we had another person, that would be fine. But anybody listening could ask questions and interact on the chat. Okay.
Well, that's what I would like. Yeah, I would like it to be open forum for people to talk about this kind of thing. There's probably a lot of people out there who are struggling with this, of how to find happiness. Like, they had the great job, they had the money, they had the wife and kids, and they're still not finding happiness. And don't get me wrong, I still have hard times. And Don, how about you? I know, do you ever still have times when you find happiness elusive?
Not really. I tell you, my life, it's been a long road for me. And certainly there's when you have a body,
yeah,
and
right.
you live in a
Physical
material
needs.
world, you have issues to deal with. But I would say that really, probably about 20 years ago, things shifted for me big time, to where, I guess I've just learned in my gut, not just in my head. That's kind of how it goes, is you get it in your head first, and then it takes a different amount of times to get into your heart, into your being. But yeah, I mean, I'd say as a result of all the stuff that I've experienced and things I've learned, I'm really, pretty much at peace. I mean, that could change anytime, but like this last 2 years of pandemic and all this stuff going on, and people, I mean, a lot of us that are a little deeper into it have a different perspective on it. But I mean, like I've told, my friends and wife, and, people that are, if you want to, I don't even like the term truther thing, but
no, I don't like that term.
But the people that are looking at alternative media and getting more real news about what's really going on, and the Nasara, Jasara, and the quantum and all that stuff, I do have a sense that we're certainly moving towards that. But I've told these other people, there's a lot of people that are just hanging on, waiting for that. Okay.
Yeah, right.
Right. But I've told all those people, and they don't like it because they think I'm being negative when I say this. But
I've gotten in trouble for that too, Don.
I said, you know what? I certainly would not want to live in a fascist communist state. But happiness is an inside job, period, end of story. So if you really believe that, which I know it's not a belief anymore, that we can be happy and at peace regardless of externals. Now, I don't know, have you ever read that book, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl?
No.
You should get that one. You could read it in 2 or 3 hours. This was an established psychiatrist. I think he was close to 40 when Hitler started rounding up all the Jews and killing them and all that stuff. This guy, Viktor Frankl, and his family were all rounded up, separated, put in different camps. He was in different camps, I think several different ones, where he didn't know from day to day if he was going to live or die. He didn't know what was going on. But he did get out finally after 4 or 5 years. And I think just about all his family was exterminated. And he wrote this book called Man's Search for Meaning. And it's unbelievable. When you read the book, there's no anger, there's no resentment. There's just he just states what he experienced and what happened. And one thing that really struck me, and I read that book every year, but it's just an amazing story. But one thing that really stuck me, as a psychiatrist, he was observing people, their psychological, emotional state, and why some people died and some people lived.
Mm-hmm.
And it was all about their attitude.
Absolutely.
What he said in there was that what he realized was that the only freedom that we really have is the freedom to choose our attitude. Okay.
Yep.
So, certainly we like to be comfortable. We like to have good health. We like to have all this stuff. No doubt. That's what we want. That's what we like. But the bottom line is, can you get into a place mentally, emotionally, spiritually, where you can have true, authentic happiness, peace, love, and joy, regardless of your external circumstances? To me, that's the deal. That's the real deal. And that's what I do in my work for people that are interested, is giving them exercises, direction, accountability to have their own experience so that they can come to that without hearing somebody talk about it or read about it, but have their own experience that, oh yeah, no matter what's going on out there, I have the choice to be happy or miserable. It's a choice.
I used to preach this to people quite a bit, and I had a premonition that one day in my life I would go to prison. I don't know how I knew it. It was intuitive. I knew I would, and that was a good test for that. And as hard as it was, and there were times when most of the time I was absolutely miserable, but there were times when I was able to find peace and happiness. From my cell, I could see the sunrise and I could see the sunset. Those 2 times were 2 of the best. That was the first time I experienced, I was sun gazing. I don't know if you've heard of this.
I have.
I was sun gazing, and I couldn't believe the way everything turned purple. Not purple, it was lavender. And that blew me away. I'd never experienced that before. That, and as simple as thing as having a piece of cardboard. I had a piece of cardboard that was just big enough for my back, because when we were kicked out of our cells in the morning, and we didn't have a cool place to, when I laid on the cement, it was cement and it had a sealant on it, and it was like 120 degrees. I'm not kidding. It was like 120 degrees. My back would sweat, and then it would break out, and it was just so uncomfortable. And then I found this piece of cardboard, and that became such a treasured thing for me. Yeah. This little piece of cardboard, and I protected it, and I would hide it when I wasn't using it. Somebody stole it one time, and I managed to find me another piece somewhere. But and there was this one little spot under a fan that not a lot of people would go there, from the prisoners. And it was a place where I could just be alone, and I could catch up on some sleep, because it was almost impossible to sleep there at night. And and happiness, find some happiness. And then also, when I'd stopped eating, after about the 3rd day, I'd stopped eating, and I was really getting into some heavy ketosis. I was having some moments of like euphoria from that whole thing.
Yeah, but so, I think based on the life experiences that we each have, that there's probably a lot of stuff we could share with people that would be useful, and I'm totally open to doing that if if your audience is interested in that type of thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, these videos that we make don't get a whole lot of views, but the people who are watching are really love them. So I think it's something that maybe we could help other people by doing it. And that's what's important here. I'm not making a lot of money from these videos. But, you know, I wanted to get my story out there. But now, like you said, I think if we can help somebody, yeah, let's do it. And you and I will have to get together and talk about it next time and see what we can come up with. And I'll ask my viewers to give some suggestions, and let's do that. Okay.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you, Scott.
All right, Don. Well, that's it for tonight, everybody. Thank you very much to the 10 or 11 people who watched. Which it's not about that. You can watch it on replay, people. All right.
See ya.
Good night, Don.
Bye.